In this video, we'll take a look at deploying the Cisco IP DECT base station using 802.1x EAP TLS, and one needs to be configured with ISE. I'm using version 3.4 and a Catalyst 9300 switch. We're going to be leveraging the MIC or Manufactured Installed Certificate. There's going to be two manufacturer installed certificates that we need to upload to ISE through the Certificate Trust Store. And it's the two certificates I'm listing at the bottom here. The CB ARC 2099 PIM and the CMCA3 PIM. Both of these certificates are posted at the Cisco site www.cisco.com/security/PKI. We'll take a look at this in a few moments. The base station itself does need to also get a certificate from the ISE server, and we'll take a look at this also in a few moments, but it's, in my case, it's the default self-signed server cert. And so all three of these certificates are critical for the EAP TLS to function. Otherwise, you will run into issues. And at the very end, I'll actually delete one of these on the base station, specifically the stop point. We'll see what kind of symptoms we see. From a troubleshooting standpoint, if we're having issues, one of the areas we want to look at doing a Wireshark capture is on the switch port where the DECT base station is at. By the way, I'm using a DBS210 DECT base station. As of the recording of this video, firmware 5.1.3 SR1 is the most recent firmware, and that's what I'm using. If we're running into issues, one of the items we want to inspect are packets between a base station and a switch. Specifically, we'll be looking at the EAP TLS packets. So in Wireshark, if you do a filter for EAP, EAP, and then also I will type in OR, and then DHCP. Typically, that combination of display filters is a good starting point to see what type of transactions are occurring, and this should lead you to the next steps in the troubleshooting. If you're suspecting issues that might be occurring between a CAT9300 switch and the ISE, then we want to do a Wireshark capture on the switch port where ISE is at. And then we want to take a look at the radius packets. The certificate we want to export from ISE and import to the DECT base station is going to be located at Administration, Certificates, System Certificates, and we want to export the one that says EAP Authentication. So we're going to check mark that, and then we're going to go ahead and export that. I'll show that in a few moments. And then this is the certificate that gets imported into the DECT base station. Okay, for the two MICs, manufacturer installed certificates, we want to go to the Cisco website, the www.cisco.com security PKI site. And then one of them is going to be the Cisco Basic Assurance Root CA CB ARC 2099. And we want to get the PIM certificate. The next one on the same web page, this will be probably 75% down, is going to be the Cisco Manufacturer CA3. So CMCA3, and then again we want to download the PIM. One item I want to highlight in the admin guide of the DECT base station, and this is going to be the PDF guide here, page 60. And you can just do a search for EAP TLS, and that will get you to that section. Is this item right here says disabled for authenticator. That is the default behavior. The one thing to note is disabled doesn't really mean disabled. It means automatic enable when e-packets are received. So what will happen is, if the base station sees any E packets coming from the switch, it's going to actually attempt to do EAP TLS authentication. And if you're trying to do MAB, you're going to run into issues. So just be aware that disabled, which is the default setting on a DBS base station with a current firmware. So starting with firmware 5.1.3 and the most current being 5.1.3 SR1, 802.1x support was introduced to the DECT base station. This applies to both the DBS 210 and DBS 110. And just be aware that if it sees any E packets coming from the switch, it will try to do EAP TLS authentication. So this can present you with issues doing MAB, in which case you'd want to do EAP TLS instead of MAB. At the time you view this video in the future, you do want to look at the documentation as new firmware gets released to see if there's any additional features added here. Okay, we're going to log into the ISE server. This is a brand new installation of ISE, first time I'm logging in. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click next, and I'm going to hit accept there. Okay, we're going to go administration, and then we're going to go and do network devices, and then we're going to click add. So we're going to add our CAT9300 switch. Okay, we're going to give the IP address of the CAT9300 switch, and we're going to type in the model of the switch. Okay, we're going to enable radius authentication settings. Okay, we're going to put our shared secret in. So this needs to match what's on a switch and also what's on radius. We're going to submit it. Okay. Okay, we're going to go to administration and certificates. We're going to find the EAP authentication certificate. We're going to check mark that. So this certificate is the one that's going to be imported to DECT. Then we're going to export this certificate. Okay, I'm going to put them in the same folder as I have my mixed certificates, so I can later upload it to the DECT. Okay, we're going to go trusted certificates. We're going to import. We're going to make sure trust for client authentication is selected. We're going to do our first mixed certificate. We're going to submit. Okay, we're going to do now the second mixed certificate. Again, trust for client authentication, browse. This would be our second mixed certificate. Okay, we're going to hit submit. Okay, now we have both mixed certificates on ISE server. We're going to log into our DBS 210 base station. On the left hand side, we're going to find where we have the security group, and then we're going to go down a tad and we're going to click browser to import the certificate. Okay, we're going to go in and find our folder where we have the certificate we exported from ISE server. We're going to load that certificate. Okay, we're just going to do a visual inspection to make sure certificate uploaded to the DBS 210. Okay, yes, it's at the very bottom there, ISE 131.mylab.local certificate. Okay. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the configuration, and then we're going to go do a shut, no shut. So this is a switch port where the base station's at, and this is going to basically will trigger the EAP TLS authentication, we're going to go to live logs, and then we're going to monitor this. I'm going to go ahead and set it to a 5-second refresh timer on the live logs, and also we'll take a look at the console output here of the switch itself. So I just did a no shut. So this will start doing the PoE power here in a few moments. Please note in my example, since I was testing this with multiple servers, I do have additional servers in my config. We'll take a look at this in a moment, where I've shut those servers down, ISE servers. I wanted to show a brand new installation of ISE, exact steps I did to get this working with EAP TLS. So this is going to be a little bit longer than what you would probably see in your deployment, because I have I have 3 servers that are not active, that are shut down, but the config in the switch is still there for those. So the switch will actually go to those 3 ISE servers. We'll find they're not responding. Then I'll go to the 4th ISE server, which is this brand new server right now. So this may take a little bit longer than most likely what you're going to see in your deployment. That's okay. We'll give it a little bit of time here. Okay, we're getting ping responses. Okay, so let's take a look at the details here. Okay, authentication succeeded. Authentication succeeded. Okay, DBS 210. Okay, so there's a DBS 210 for the subject. Okay, Cisco manufacturer CA3. Okay. CAT9300 right below the DBS 210 right there. Okay. Okay. Okay, and then we'll take a look at the switch itself. We'll do some show commands for the authentication. This command I'm doing right now may be useful if you're running into issues to see what the switch is seeing on that side. So I'm just going to go into the interface for the show authentication. So this again is what a successful authentication looks like. Then the next one will be details. And just having a console where you're seeing the live output also is helpful, because that'll show in real time what is happening. Okay, I'm just going to refresh the DBS 210 admin page. Give it a few moments. So we're going back into now after the EAP TLS authentication that occurred. So you notice it's 5.1.3 SR1 firmware. We're going to go down there, okay? And then we're going to go ahead and go diagnostics, and we're going to export. So what I did basically is I already had this base station configured for debug level logging. If you notice, I have all those vertical check marks enabled at the very top item. I also had that enabled. What this is going to give us is a Wireshark capture of the transaction just occurred, which is very critical if you're troubleshooting. Obviously, if you're not able to access, I'm just going to give it a description here. Obviously, if you're troubleshooting, you're not able to access the base station because of the EAP TLS authentication not working correctly, you'd want to do port mirroring on a switch, source port where the base station's at on a switch, destination port where you have a notebook connected to the same switch, and you want to do a Wireshark capture. But this will kind of be the same thing that I'm going to show here in a few moments. In this case, since this is working, I'm going to leverage the built-in Wireshark capture on the DECT base station, and we'll take a look at the Wireshark output to see what it looks like when it is working. So I'm just going to extract this package right here, unzip it, and this will have the Wireshark capture inside the folder of the MAC address for the base station, of this base station. So open this up, and then again we want to leverage display filter EAP or DHCP. I find this most useful if, as a baseline starting point. So notice a majority of the transactions is for the EAP TLS, then at the bottom we have success, and then it transitions to DHCP. So we'll just take a look at some of these packets here really quickly. But I would say a combination of using the live log in ISE and also Wireshark captures on a switch port where the base station's at is going to be your most useful starting point to figure out what's going on. If you suspect there's some type of issue occurring between the switch, in this case the CAT9300 and your ISE server, then you'd also want to do a Wireshark capture on a switch port where the ISE server's at. So you get the packets between ISE and the CAT9300 to see what's going on from a radius standpoint. Then you would do a filter for radius instead of the EAP or DHCP that I'm doing for this Wireshark capture that was done on the base station itself. Again, if you're having issues with the base station, you would do the Wireshark capture using port mirroring, source port where the base station's at, destination port would be a notebook on the same switch with Wireshark. Another item you could consider is also using a network tap, inserting a network tap that does PoE pass-through between the base station network switch if that's more convenient. Okay, and then I'm just wrapping it up here towards the bottom, looking at the DHCP packets. Okay, so what I did right now off camera is I factory reset the base station, see what kind of problem this is going to generate. So if you notice, this says that handshake, the client rejected basically ISE local certificate. So what's happening is the EAP TLS is not going through because the client rejected the ISE local certificate. After a factory reset the base station off camera, it's not able to authenticate using EAP TLS because the base station no longer has the certificate from ISE. So what we're going to do to correct this is we're going to go to security. We're going to go down here and we're going to, where it says import root certificate on the bottom, we're going to go in and browse, and we're going to import the certificate that we exported from ISE earlier. We're going to click on load. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to do a visual inspection to make sure that certificate from ISE was loaded onto the DECT base station before we try the EAP TLS authentication. Okay, yep, you see it at the very bottom there, ISE131.mylab.local. Okay. Okay, and then we're going to go to the live logs, and then I'm going to get the actual base station to the switch port where we have EAP TLS configured, and we're going to give it a few moments. In my example here, as I had mentioned earlier, it is going to take a little bit longer because I do have those 3 additional servers configured where the CAT9300 is trying to reach, which are offline, and the reason is I was doing quite a lot of testing with different scenarios, but I wanted to record this video with a brand new fresh server showing from the get-go the very first login what I did. So what I'm showing here is going to be a little bit longer than what you're going to see in your environment, but that's okay. We'll just give it here a few moments and we'll take a look at it. Okay, I'm going to bring up my ping, continuous ping, towards the DECT base station, and then we'll give it a few moments here. Looking at the console output of the switch and seeing in real time what the switch is outputting is also very useful, because a combination of the Wireshark captures that I mentioned and also using the live logging and also using the console output of switch, whatever is the problem, okay, it just authenticated. Whatever is the problem, by having that visibility, will kind of guide you to the next steps of what needs to be a focus point in the troubleshooting. We'll take a look at the details. Okay, authentication succeeded. Okay, authentication succeeded. EAP TLS. Okay. .1x. DBS 210. Cisco Systems. TLS version 1.2. There's a CA manufacturer MIC 3 there I just went by, and then it's the CAT9300, DBS 210. To kind of wrap up this video, I'm just going to show what I have on my switch, my CAT9300, from a radius configuration, AAA and .x. What I was mentioned earlier, these three servers I was using for earlier testing, they are offline, and this is inducing some delay or latency. And you'll probably see faster response than I am. The server we're using actually for this testing right now is a brand new ISE server 4 that I just configured. Be aware this having multiple different servers which are offline, and then the server using being last on the list will introduce some delay. But that's okay, this is a lab environment I'm showing this in. Okay, so the CAT I'm using here is a C9300-48U. This is the actual firmware version the CAT 9300 has that I'm testing with right now. And then I'm just highlighting here basically the AAA commands I've configured. So obviously you wanna, if this is a first time deployment of doing AAA with 802.1x, then you can kind of use this as a starting point, kind of see all the different things I have here from my switch from a configuration standpoint. And then we also have .1x system-auth-control. This is the switch port where I was doing the testing with the DECT base station, DBS 210. So these are the configured commands for the authentication. Okay, and then the source interface for the radius towards the ISE server is going to be VLAN 1 in my situation. And this was what I was mentioning earlier. These three first servers are offline. I was doing quite a lot of testing. I wanted to bring up a brand new server when I recorded this video, which is this third server right here. And so this is where ISE, or the CAT9300 switch, was talking to ISE right here. Normally in a production environment, these would be live servers, and you should see a faster response for the onboarding or the authentication, I should say, to the switch. In my case, because of all the testing I was doing, I just kind of left these. I'm going to do some additional testing as needed here. Okay, and then these were some of the show commands that can be useful when troubleshooting. Show authentication session interface, the interface where the DECT base station is at. Some of the stuff I did blur out because of obvious reasons. So this is the MAC address of my DECT base station that would be printed right here. These are the last two characters. In my case is 6 Charlie. The method it authenticated .x, .1x. Okay, and then the same command, this time we've added details at the very end. Shows the interface. Shows the device, DBS 210. Again, I've kind of blanked out some of the information like the MAC address. And at the bottom shows authentication success. Okay, well, thank you for watching the video. Hopefully this video that covers the Cisco IP DECT base station 8021X EAP TLS configuration example with ISE. Hopefully this helps with your deployment if you're going to be doing EAP TLS 8021X with the DECT base station. Thank you for watching the video.